Welcome back to the Rialto. We're so happy you're here tonight. My name is Bill Crandall, and I lead the group of community members who have come together to transform this iconic movie house into a home for live music, theater, art, education, and community events, as well as movies. And this is going to be for all ages, from preschoolers to seniors. We are expecting in the coming weeks to hear from the state of New Jersey that they are going to fund 80% of this project. That's the good news. Then we have 1 year to raise $9 million. Those $9 million are going to go to completing our construction costs and our original operational budget. So we're going to need everybody and all your connections to spread the word and support us. We have, in addition to individual donor opportunities, we have naming rights, we have sponsorship opportunities, and we have awesome, hardworking board members with these name tags who are all around this joint, and they want to talk to you about all of that. So tell them everybody you know, and we're going to do this thing, okay? If you're watching us at home on your phone, please go to rialtowestfield.org and find out how you can be a part of this. Once again, 1 year, $9 million. Every dollar that you give up to the first $9 million, the state's going to add another $4 million. Is that a good deal? All right. We going to do this? Woo! Okay. Awesome. Our guest tonight, he and I worked together at Rolling Stone. Before that, way before that, we didn't know each other, but we both started in music journalism at high schools right down the road in different directions. I was walking the halls of Westfield High, translating miserably sad lyrics into Maxell cassette tapes and then handing them to one person at a time. They would get back to me and said, "I really love your mixtape and I really like you as a friend." And then years later, I moved out to San Francisco to continue my passion in music, and I became the editor of BAM magazine. And there I was lucky enough to work with this superstar photographer whose studio was the destination spot for every big name artist who came to town to play the Fillmore. He would call me with, questions like, "Crandall, I'm shooting Ice-T tomorrow. You need anything?" So when I listened to the cadence of his voice, I was like, this guy had to grow up near me. So one day I was like, well, where'd you grow up? And he was like, "Ever heard of Clark?" So our host, he lives here right now. He commutes to New York City as part of the fabulous Elvis Duran in the Morning Show. That's his voice you heard in our vision video. Please give a warm Rialto welcome for Garrett Vogel and Jay Blakesberg.
You could have been anywhere in Westfield tonight, and you're here, so thank you very much.
Hey, tax day is coming up, April 15th. If anybody donates $1 million before April 15th, I'll give you a portfolio of 5 photographs of Jerry Garcia signed by me. Does that work for you guys on the board? Okay, so just think, and listen, if you don't give the $1 million to the Rialto, you just got to give it to the government anyway, so you might as well just...
And I'll sign Jerry's name. Well, thank you for coming. This is a very special night. This crowd is... have you been here before for these series? A few people. Everyone that's not, this is the best audience yet. I haven't told that to anybody, so just appreciate that. A lot of color here. I'll be honest, I thought we had a deadhead right there, ready to go. And just seeing the passion of music, everything that this man has created over the years, and the inspiration all started right here and right next door, as we learned. So, Jay, before we get started with your journey, let's talk about, just growing up in the area. Was there that one moment, time, place that you realized that you had this talent of photography that inspired you to get into the career that you're at right now?
So I grew up in the 1970s. I was in high school. I was in high school from 75 to 79. We did not have the internet to tell us what to do or how to act, and we listened to the radio, WNEW, and probably would have been listening to his station.
Too kind.
The Elvis Duran show. And
look at your hand next time.
you know, so we were inspired by reading Rolling Stone magazine and Relics magazine, and listening to records, and our older brothers and sisters. My sister is here. She brought me to my first Grateful Dead concert at Englishtown in 1977. But you know, I think that the thing that inspired us the most was adolescent stupidity. You know, like how many dumb things can you do without dying in Clark and Westfield, New Jersey?
I think they still do it here.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that all of your kids are doing the same thing. And rock and roll, you know, literally. And as a teenager, you're trying to find your place in the script. And for me, a camera worked, and it helped sort of define who I was. I was that kid with a camera, and I had a darkroom. I made prints and gave them to my friends, and we thumbtacked them to our bedroom walls, and you know, things like that. So, yeah.
Now, if you could go back in time, back to the 70s when you were here and having the talent that you do now, is there that one thing that you wish you could reshoot?
I just wish I shot more film.
Real.
More.
Well, this good life general lesson right there. Just
Yes.
more.
Say yes.
Now, before we get started, seeing what this place is right now and what it was and what it's going to be, why do you think this place is important for the future?
Because we got to inspire the kids, right? It's not easy being a creative individual and making a living, right? Our parents always said, you know, be a lawyer, be a doctor, be an accountant, go on Wall Street. But some of us want to be musicians or DJs or
Did your
dancers.
parents say anything?
Of course
like that?
they did.
What did they want you to be?
They were nice Jewish parents. They said, you know, become a lawyer, become a doctor. I'm like, no, I have too much ADD, and I like the Grateful Dead, and I've taken LSD. I can't do that. You know, so, you know, I just sort of followed my own path.
Right.
And the music and the lyrics. I mean, when we were in high school, we listened to these songs, and these songs inspired us, and we listened to those lyrics, and we took them to heart, and they meant more to us than what we were learning in school. You know, like if you think about the first time you heard Bob Dylan sing Tangled Up in Blue, you're like, holy shit, there's this whole world out there. Why do I need to stay in Clark or Westfield, right? So these songs took us on these adventures, and that's what we did, and that's what made us, sort of inspired us and moved us forward.
Well, I think you should take us on that journey. You know, as they say, picture's worth 1,000 words, and I think for you, it's going to be 1,000,000 words with each picture. So I'm excited to see what we have, and I'm sure everyone's ready to dive into your life as well through photos.
I'm going to try and go quickly. If we can lower the lights, that's so much better. And wow, today was an epic day. I went to the house that I grew up in where this photo was taken. And I was in this basement, and it's Roman and Eugenia right over here. Thank you for hosting us, and Mark and Alyssa and Dylan, they're friends who, Mark's son Dylan, who's 22, stalked me on social media and found out that I lived in Westfield where they lived. And Mark said, I know the guy who lives in the house you grew up in. Next time you come to Westfield, you got to come and check it out. So just real quick, this is my mother's store. My mother had a store here on Elm Street, Backroom Antiques, from about 1973 to 89 when they moved to Florida. This is Paula, her partner in that store, who kept it alive after they moved to Florida for a number of years. And then this is the house that is under construction, and this Roman gave me these photos today at his house. This is my father's house being built in 1971. And there's my dad in front of the house in the mid-'80s. And this is Roman gave me this today. This is the flyer for when he bought the house. Is this how much houses are in Westfield now? $399 on Frazee Court, right? This was the best thing. My sister's here also, so Jan, there's our phone number, 232-0148. Roman still has the phones in the basement. Okay, I mean, and look, and there's the office phone for my father, Bill, and Laz and Ralph, the accountants, in my house. But this is why I came here. Mark Berger said, I think the graffiti from the house you grew up in is still there. This is my dark room in the 80s, and they never painted over it. So there's my name, my sister Abby, my girlfriend Lizzie. It says dark room. I mean, this is literally my basement from the 1980s. What a flashback. Bill Crandall mentioned BAM Magazine. That's where we originally met. I shot 59 covers for BAM Magazine, many of them before he got there. This is my first cover in 1989. So just real quick, here's a couple of shots that I did and a couple of BAM Magazine covers. And after a while, you know, they would always put the name of the writer on the cover, but they wouldn't put the photographer. And then eventually they started, and they started putting my name on the cover. And then mentioning what Bill said about Ice-T. If you see here, Ice-T's name is about the same size as mine. And that's when Bill's boss freaked out and said, Jay Blakesberg's name is not allowed to be on the cover anymore. And this was the last time it was ever on the cover because they made body count big, but Ice-T and me had the same billing. Was this your cover story, or were you editor at this time? Yeah, I know. You can see Heidi wrote it. I shot Alanis Morissette's first magazine cover. I shot Tori Amos's first. Some of these are a little bit red. I asked if we could adjust the projector and take some of the red out, and then they told me no because this projector is calibrated to Rialto green. Okay. And so in order to take the red out, you have to add green, and that would have changed the dynamic. So we're going to have to deal with it. Some other stuff that I shot. But, before you get to shooting magazine covers, you have to grow up in Clark or Westfield, right? And as I mentioned here earlier, we grew up by the rule of adolescent stupidity. This is on the bleachers in Clark at ALJ High School. And that's my sister Jan right down front. We, like I said, we tried to do as many things as we could. And my friend Stu, who lived in Clark growing up with me. Duffy is here from Clark, who was a couple years older than me. So in my junior year of high school, in May of 1978, we went to a Jorma Kaukonen. Does anybody remember the Capitol Theater in Passaic, New Jersey? Right, so that was our clubhouse. And so I drove up with this guy named Lozzie, who was supposed to be here tonight, but he's not feeling well today. And we saw Jorma, and then after the show, we waited outside to get his autograph. There's Lozzie on the left with his eyes bugging out of his head. And so Lozzie said, let's get in my car and follow Jorma's limousine and get his autograph. So we jumped in the car, we follow it to New York City. Jorma gets out in a delicatessen at Midtown, and we walk into this deli, and I say, hey, Jorma, how about a smile? And this is the photo that he gives me, right? And so this particular photo, back in the 70s, and you guys all know who Jorma is. He was in Hot Tuna, Jefferson Airplane, very seminal bands. If you went backstage at a Hot Tuna show in the 70s, they told you not to drink anything that's already open because everything is dosed and you will look like this. So you got to be careful. So I took this photograph and I mailed it as a letter to the editor to Relics magazine. Relics was the Grateful Dead magazine, the magazine that we read cover to cover. And they published my story in Relics, right? A letter to the editor. We went to the Capitol Theater. They stopped at a deli. We got $10 bill signed, which we ended up spending the next day. But the thing that's so remarkable about this is that I was 16 years old and I was published in print, right? And so nowadays, we're all published every 30 seconds on social media, but when you're 16 years old and you have a photograph published in print, it's a pretty epic thing. And so when I do public speaking like this, and I speak in high schools and colleges, I talk about the spark, right? And that's what we're looking for in our lives. Dylan, pay attention. Okay, Dylan's 22. And also Sam, now you're a little bit older, but maybe your sister-in-law, I don't know. Anyway, so Nicole, is that your name, right? Okay. Anyway, so, we're looking for these sparks, and you want to turn these sparks into infernos, right? Because that's how you live a grand, fabulous life, right? You can stay at home if you're young, and you can sit on your device in front of your computer, and that's what the Rialto is trying to do, get people the kids away from sitting in front of their computers and interact with people and do art and do all of those things, right? So, and if you do that, you can find these sparks and have these experiences that will hopefully become big parts of your life. Exactly 1 year later from the Jorma thing, in May of 1979, I was 4 weeks away from graduating from high school, and I went down to see a couple of Grateful Dead shows in Virginia and Maryland. And after the Virginia show, the guy that I was with totaled his van in the parking lot. He was drunk. We didn't have the don't drink and drive videos and films ingrained in our head yet. And so we pushed his van into a parking spot, and we put out our thumbs and say, anybody going to Baltimore for the Dead show? And, of course, we get picked up in a minute by some Long Island Deadheads. And while we're there, we hear on the radio there's going to be a giant No Nukes rally. You guys all remember 3 Mile Island. This was all going on at that time. And so we're like, we don't need to go to high school on Monday. Let's just go to the No Nukes rally, right? So we all go to the No Nukes rally, and there's 65,000 people there. And we park our car. And everybody in this room can find your friends in a crowd of 50,000 people without a cell phone except for Dylan, because he's 22, right? And so we just said, we'll meet you back at the car, which we parked 20 blocks away after the thing was over with 65,000 people. And I said, I'm going up front. I got my camera. I got some film. I'm 17 years old. And Jane Fonda is on stage speaking. right? And so I'm like, oh my God, look at all those photographers down front. It's the New York Times and Newsweek and Time and Washington Post. I'm like, I want to be one of those photographers. And I turn around and I look on the ground and I find a press pass. So immediately I just go backstage, and before you know it, I'm on stage with Jane Fonda. Right? This is like a 5-minute speech. So this all happens pretty quick. And I'm like, almost famous. I'm like, here's my pass. I'm supposed to be here, right? 17 years old, have no business being there. And then a few minutes later, Joni Mitchell comes on stage, and Jackson Browne and Graham Nash and Joni Mitchell, and I'm just on stage because I'm young and stupid and 17. And then I turn around and Bob Weir and Brent Midland from the Grateful Dead are standing there. And so I have my first almost famous moment meeting a member of the Grateful Dead. Now, Brent had just joined the Grateful Dead 4 weeks earlier. Nobody knew who he was unless you had seen the Bob Weir band a year before. And back then we didn't get a notification on our future science fiction telephone device saying, push notification, welcome, new member of the Grateful Dead, Brent Midland, right? That didn't happen for 40 more years. And so nobody knew who he was, but I had seen him. Everybody was like, who's the keyboard player? It looks like Greg Allman. Like, that's how quick news traveled in 1979. And so then I graduated from high school. So those are some of the things that happened to me kind of leading up to. So this is how your career starts, right? There are these sparks. Like, this is another spark. You find the pass, you take advantage of it, and you move with it, right? So a few months after graduating from high school in September of 1979, I go up to Rochester, New York to some Dead shows. And I had met this guy a week earlier out in Colorado at a Dead show whose name was Jay. And he said, I'm going to review the show for the Aquarian Weekly. Everybody remember the Aquarian Weekly, the free newspaper? And so the Aquarian published 2 of my photos of the Grateful Dead, and I got paid $7.50 for each. You can see September 19th, 1979. I was 17 years old, and I was a published paid photographer. So this is sort of the beginning of how these sparks and these things happen, and that you have to sort of seize the moment and say yes. I was still a bit young and stupid and didn't quite know how to do it, but I listened to the lyrics, and I knew that, something had to change. So I saw my first Grateful Dead concert in September of 1977 at Englishtown. Who was at Englishtown to see the Grateful Dead, right? So legendary, epic show. My friend Mark, who I'm staying with here in Cranford, and his wife Katie. My friend Gary from Clark was there also. And a year later, they played at Giant Stadium. My dad loaned me his Pentax camera. I was 16 years old. I was just about to enter my senior year of high school, and I took my first photographs of the Grateful Dead. 3 weeks later, I shot Neil Young and Bob Dylan at Madison Square Garden, and I was sort of on my way. I was sort of defining myself, as Garrett talked to me earlier, as that guy with the camera, and I was taking these photographs, and I was giving them to my friends, and I think I developed some of them in your basement, Gary. Did I, or am I remembering that wrong? Hartstein, right, thank you, in his basement before I built my darkroom. So the Grateful Dead is and by the way, this is the reduced version of my slideshow. Like, I do a 90-minute slideshow, but the Rialto people told me that they would kill me and hang me from the marquee if I spoke for 90 minutes, and that I had to keep it fast and furious. So I'm doing the best I can. So in 1978, the Grateful Dead played at the Capitol Theater in Passaic. Tickets were $10, pretty much the same price they are today. And if you got an orchestra ticket, you got this gold foil ticket, and I like to say this was my Willy Wonka golden ticket. So these photographs here were taken at the Capitol Theater with my own camera. My 17th birthday was the following week on December 1st, 1978, and my dad had bought me a camera, and so this is the first time that I shot the Grateful Dead with my camera. So for me, the Grateful Dead has always been an important adventure and an important part of my career. That's why this event sold out in 1 hour, because the Deadheads know what's going on, right? So, you guys didn't know like what you were getting yourself into here. And so in December of 79, 3 weeks after I turned 18, I jumped on a Greyhound bus and went to California for the first time to photograph the Grateful Dead. I didn't know that airlines existed, but let me tell you something. A Greyhound bus in December 1979 across country is the freakiest thing you could ever do in your entire life. The weirdest people ever are on that bus. It's unbelievable. It's magical. And so so they played 5 nights, was standard for New Year's back then. And I was from New Jersey, Clark and Westfield to be specific. Well, at that time I was just from Clark still. I guess my parents lived here. Oh yeah, they lived here, 71. My dad lived in Westfield. Sorry, I digress. And so I had a plan. I was going to shoot the first night, the third night, and the fifth night. And on the second and fourth nights, I would take copious amounts of LSD because we were 18 years old, and that's how we rolled. Paul, I'm not scaring you, am I? Okay, good. Okay, just making sure. You know all this. And so I photographed the Grateful Dead on the 26th and the 28th of December, and then on the 31st of December, we always knew that at midnight, Bill Graham, because we read about it in magazines, would come out at midnight and do some sort of midnight gag, dressed as Father Time or some fly across the room, but we didn't know what was going to happen. And so at 11:59, the lights go out, and the spotlights are up on the ceiling, and we're like a little bit high from the 5 hits of acid we took the night before. And all of a sudden, you see a giant butterfly flying across the sky with Steal Your Faces on the wings. Now, we're all from New Jersey. They don't have giant butterflies with Steal Your Faces on their wings in New Jersey, unless, has anybody seen those around here anywhere? Right? Okay, I'm right. Stu has. You were on drugs, dude. And then the butterfly lands in a butterfly net like 5 feet away from me. And of course, like I'm from New Jersey and my mind is completely blown. And the balloons come down. They're playing Sugar Magnolia. And it's just this magical moment. You're leaning on the stage and you realize that is exactly where you're supposed to be for the rest of your life. You just know it at that moment. And I'm still there. Thank you. So, lots of Grateful Dead. Another thing that I'm somewhat known for is taking photographs of Deadheads. And Deadheads are unlike any other music fans. And so in the 80s and 90s, and still even to this day, I always pointed my camera at the fans. And people are always like, why did you take so many photographs of the fans, and why weren't you shooting the band? And it's pretty simple, right? So you're at a Grateful Dead concert, and you guys will know this if you've seen this music or experienced this music. You're with your best friends, you're with your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your future ex-husband or future ex-wife, right? And you're like in this moment, listening to these songs, listening to these lyrics, and there's this, they're singing about magical creatures and dragons with matches and gamblers and cowboys. And it's magic. But if you turn around and look what's happening around you, this is happening around you, right? And so for me, I just saw this as an opportunity to document photographs of my friends. Most of these people I know. This is my friend little Stephanie. This is Harmony. That's Heidi back there. These were the people that were hanging out. This is my best friend Jennifer, Christine. So we were I was photographing the people that I knew. And there's Tammy, my girlfriend at the time. She was 17. I was 18. We were on Dead Tour together, little Stephanie. And so when we look at these photos now, 40 years later, 45 years later, the thing that makes these so important is that this can never happen again. Not because Jerry Garcia is not with us or the Grateful Dead is not with us, but because there's no technology, right? So everybody is doing their thing, dancing and experiencing this music to be in the moment, at the moment, and not to be on social media the next day. And sadly, this will never happen again in the world of rock and roll, no matter what happens, even if they tell you to put your cell phones away, because there's still a video camera, there's still other, so it was just a very different time. And so I consider myself a visual anthropologist, right? Anthropology being defined as the study of humankind. This is the modern day hippie tribe. It's really only at this point just a little over 60 years old, starting in the mid 1960s. So we're still in our infancy of being hippies. And I feel like I've got like a good 40-year plus chunk of this tribe documented in still photographs. So the Grateful Dead in 1980. So after the last summer show in 1980 in Lewiston, Maine, September 6th, I started fall semester of college at Middlesex County College in Edison. And they had an incredible photography program back then. I don't know if they still do or not. And so I was still following the Grateful Dead, but at the same time, I was trying to be a college student, which was kind of difficult. So I dropped out of college and did what any other young person from Clark and Westfield do. I just started following the Grateful Dead. And so eventually I crossed over to the other side and I became an insider. And so one of my first big moments to do that was when I got hired by a Grateful Dead fanzine called The Golden Road. And I was asked to do a portrait of Jerry Garcia and Robert Hunter, the principal songwriter for the Grateful Dead. And I did this up in the Grateful Dead office, and it was my first portrait session with Garcia. And I was expecting to spend 30 minutes with him and shoot with my Hasselblad and 2 1/4 and different film formats and color and black and white and strobe lights. And they gave me 3 minutes in the office to shoot both Garcia Hunter and Garcia by himself. And I still ended up with my most iconic portrait of Jerry that I've done. So you just kind of can't crack under the pressure. One last Grateful Dead story. I got hired in 1993 to shoot a cover of Acoustic Guitar magazine. And so I was shooting Garcia and Grisman, see if we had more green in it. It looked much better, but then Rialto green would be not Rialto green anymore. It'd be like St. Patty's Day green, and they would be really mad at me. Anyway, so I'm shooting Garcia and Grisman, and then Jerry takes off his glasses, and I'm like, dude, put your glasses on. You're freaking me out. Right. So he puts them back on, and then they're like singing. Right. So the best way to get Garcia to sit there for a long period of time is to give him a guitar. So he's playing guitar, and then all of a sudden Jerry starts singing. And I'm like, dude, you can't sing because your mouth is going to look all weird, and it's a magazine cover. I don't want you'll be all like wonky. So I'm like the only person having a private concert in David Grisman's living room with Jerry Garcia and tells Jerry to stop singing. Like, I'm such an idiot, right? But I had to do it. Anyway, so these are some of the other portraits from that same day. And then the actual cover that they ended up using. Of course, if you're Deadhead and maybe not, you know that we just lost Bob Weir. So just a little tribute to Bobby here before I move on from the Grateful Dead. So these are just some of the portraits that I've done of Bobby over the years. Joni Mitchell. This is, of course, from that No Nukes rally that I told you about. So, anybody here a fan of Joni Mitchell? Everybody love Joni Mitchell? So, huge fan of Joni Mitchell. And in 1998, pre-cell phone, they had pagers, but I didn't like pagers, so I didn't have one. I was living in San Francisco. It was the go-go 90s. It was .com 1.0. The Bay Area was out of control. We were working nonstop. I was shooting 3 jobs a day. It was complete bonkers. And I get a voicemail. I'm down in Silicon Valley shooting some computer geek dude who should be here donating $1 million because he made it all in the .com 1.0. I shot the founders of Yahoo, Philo and Yang, when there were 15 employees at Yahoo. Okay. I shot the founders of Google. You guys have heard of that one? There were 75 employees at Google in front of their company car, which was a blue Volkswagen Beetle for Fortune magazine. Right now they have the company Jet. Okay. And there were 70, and they said, do you know anybody looking for a B2B marketing job? I'm like, yeah, my sister-in-law, she lives next door. And I go to her, I go, do you want to go work for this new company called Google? She's like, no, I want a job in San Francisco. She's had a whole career in B2B marketing. She's like, I'm going to stay in San Francisco. If she had taken that job, she would be worth $250 million today because there were 75 employees at Google. She would have been underemployee number 100. Anyway, I digress. So I get a voice message on a shoot that I'm on from a woman named Joey Riggs. She was the art director of the San Francisco Examiner Sunday magazine, like a newsprint magazine. And it's like, hey, Jay, it's Joey. I got an assignment for you. Can you shoot Joni Mitchell for me next week? I need a portrait. We're going to do a cover story. And by the time I got the message and called her back, she had given the assignment to somebody else. And like an hour and a half had gone by. And I'm like, and I call her up. I'm like, dude, you fire that fucking other photographer right now because I'm doing the shoot. And she did. Okay, so this is my only other shoot with Joni, and she literally is the queen. And so I spent a little under an hour with her in a grand ballroom at a beautiful hotel, the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco. And she wore this epic outfit. And, so when we get an hour or 45 minutes or 30 minutes with an artist, we'll shoot black and white, we'll shoot color. You can see these are all square format photos. So these are shot with my Hasselblad, right? And then I would shoot 35 millimeter to get some really simple, quick portraits. And then these are Polaroids that are shot with a 4x5 camera. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my creative process, right? So a 4x5 camera is a big camera with a tripod with a cloth over your head. And so to do this photograph, you have to focus, close your lens, put the film holder in the back of the ground glass, take the dark slide out, shoot the shot, put it back in, take the film holder out, refocus. So if you have 30 minutes with an artist and you're doing 4x5 portraits, each one of these takes about 2 minutes to do. Right, so you're burning through a lot of time. And so Polaroid, this is the Polaroid, and that's the actual negative. So Polaroid doesn't exist anymore. They used to make a film called Type 55 black and white, and it gave you a black and white negative along with your Polaroid print. So you could print from it or now scan it and then print from that. So that's what's going on there. And then that's a 2 1/4 shot from the same setup. So this is what we call my blue period. Did anybody see my museum exhibit at the Mars Museum a few years ago? A couple of people went there. So if you make it to LA before the summer, before August, I have a full career retrospective exhibit. My daughter curated it. Excuse me, my daughter's 30 years old. And it's only photographs I shot on film from 1978 to 2008. All 3 of my museum exhibits have been the same thing. It's called Retro Blakesberg. I did one at the Mars Museum, one at the Contemporary Jewish Museum in San Francisco, and now it's at the Grammy Museum. And so we talk a lot about my blue period. Picasso had a blue period. I'm from Clark and Westfield. I can have a blue period too, right? And so what's going on here, and I did this a lot with a lot of different artists in the late 90s, is that essentially I'm shooting the wrong film with the wrong light to intentionally get this look. So this is how it comes out of the camera. So lights like this that are warm, incandescent, remember your old light bulbs when we were in college and you took a picture and the flash didn't go off and everything was yellow, right? Because film is balanced to a certain color temperature. Most film is balanced to daylight, okay? You buy it off the drugstore shelf, it's balanced to daylight. Take a photo with that under a yellow light, it's going to be yellow. How do you change that? Kodak and Fuji, mostly Kodak, made a blue film. Had a lot of blue in it, which would give you a neutral color balance. So I was taking the wrong film, shooting it with the wrong light in order to get this. And then if you look at this photo closely, you can see that it's out of focus on the top and out of focus on the bottom. Shot with the 4x5 camera. So a 4x5 camera has a lens that tilts from top to bottom and left to right, tilts and shifts. And mostly 4x5 cameras are used for architecture. They're used for shooting products. So if you're shooting a cereal box and you're up top, the cereal box looks bigger on the top and gets smaller. When you tilt your lenses, you can correct that. So what I was doing is I was intentionally shifting my lens, intentionally making it go out of focus on the bottom or the top, but keeping it in focus on her eyes. So now I'm shooting the wrong film with the wrong light, with the wrong camera, with the lens in the wrong position to intentionally come up with a look like this. So this is all, so as a photographer, you're only as good as your last photo. Who gives a shit that I shot Jerry Garcia and Joni Mitchell and whoever else, right? If you're showing your work to an art director or a marketing person or a creative director, you essentially need to be brilliant. And no, we can't be brilliant every time we shoot, but you need to be above average. You need to be really good, and you need to deliver film that is unique and original and really interesting. And those are the things that people can learn in places like the Rialto when they get this place up and running. When you get people to talk about stuff like this and you're a young photographer, they might get inspired by this, right? So if I was here talking to 300 kids and they saw this, somebody might be like, I'm going to do my version of that. They'll never duplicate this, but that's what it's about, is inspiring people. That's just a straight color 4x5 Polaroid of Joni. You can see the same thing here. This is the blue film, 4x5 camera. You can see her eyes are in focus and the lens is tilted, and so it just goes out of focus like that. And of course, Joni, because she made a record called Blue, which we all absolutely love and listen to still to this day. I certainly do. Of course, I wanted to shoot the blue film because it made perfect sense to shoot Joni with blue film. This is a guy named Gary Burden, and he was the art director who did all of those records in the 70s. And it shouldn't be in the slideshow, but I did a slideshow at the Grammy Museum a couple weeks ago, and the other guy I did it with was his best friend. So that's why it's here. And so here's the cover from the Examiner magazine. And a few years ago, I was at the debutante ball with Bob Weir from the Grateful Dead at the same hotel where I did Joni, and I showed Bobby the photo, and he said, let's go recreate it. So there's Bobby with my digital camera during COVID at the debutante ball in San Francisco for his daughter, and recreated the Joni shot. Everybody doing okay? Am I boring you? No? Okay, good. All right. Asima, we're good for like another 45 to an hour? I'm trying to go fast. All right, Carlos Santana, another legendary artist that I got really lucky to work with a lot. Love the shot. This is an assignment for Rolling Stone magazine. This is actually from my third assignment ever for Rolling Stone. My first one was a free U2 concert in downtown San Francisco. If you ever saw the movie Rattle and Hum, it's in that film. You can see me down front. I'm the guy with the mullet and the Nikon. It was the 80s. Who had a mullet in the 80s? Come on. Mark, did you have hair in the 80s? Did you have a mullet? Okay. So, and it's funny, I was with Bono and the Edge from U2 about 6 months ago at the Woody Guthrie Center in Tulsa. And I told Bono and the Edge the story about me with the mullet and the Nikon and that it was, and that shoot, which I don't think I have in the slideshow, was my first assignment for Rolling Stone magazine. 11/11/87. I went on to do 300 assignments for Rolling Stone after that. Anyway, so this is a shot that I did to Carlos at the Fillmore in San Francisco, and this ended up being my very first magazine cover ever. It was the Sunday supplement for the San Jose Mercury News, West Magazine. It's newsprint. But like work like this begets other work like this, right? So when I walked into BAM magazine before Bill worked there, I walked in and said, I want to shoot covers. That was this Camper Van Beethoven cover. And they looked at me and said, have you ever shot a cover? I said, yeah. And I showed them this. But most covers on magazines are portraits. They're not live shots. They're like, well, have you done a portrait? I'm like, no. And a month later, they called me up and said, hey, you want to go do your first cover for us? We have Camper Van Beethoven. And I went to Santa Cruz and shot it. And that was my first magazine cover for BAM. Again, went on to do 59 covers total. But that's, and once you start doing that and getting more work in your portfolio that shows this kind of stuff, it gets you more work. So based on that cover, Santana management hired me to come to his rehearsal studio and do a portrait of his band that he was working with at the time. And from there, I did this photograph of Carlos for the cover of BAM magazine in 1991. And then from there, it just keeps going on, and they just keep calling you back if they like what you do. And I'll tell you the secret to getting repeat business with a rock star like Carlos Santana, who's been doing this since he's a teenager, essentially. They are so over the photo shoot, they do not want to hang out, right? Is be creative and be really, really fast, right? So if you can get this done in 10 minutes, they love you, and they're going to have you back again and again and again. And I kind of mastered, the 10 or 15-minute portrait session for a magazine cover. And I just did so much stuff with Carlos that they just kept coming back to me over and over again. And then I took this photograph, and this was taken at a concert in San Francisco. It was actually the inauguration party for the mayor of San Francisco at the time. Willie Brown became mayor, and I shot this. They gave me a pass. And then Carlos plucked this photo out of a page of slides and put it on the back of Supernatural, right? So Supernatural sells 50 million copies. And I own the photo because the record company was like, no, we don't want to buy the photo out. That's how, you guys all know about intellectual property, IP, right? They're like, no, we'll just give you, $2,500. We're going to use it on this washed up rock star. This photo made me over $150,000 because I owned it, right? Own your IP, own what you shoot, own what you create the best that you can. This photo was ad campaigns. It was used for, the cover of the Target release, the Walmart release, the fan club release, and every time they used it, they had to pay me more money. It was the greatest thing ever. Here's an ad for Paul Reed Smith, ka-ching, another $10,000. Like literally, that's what the go-go 90s were. And then because they didn't have any portraits of Carlos on the record, they didn't do a portrait shoot. There was just my live shot on the back. They hired me to do the publicity photo shoot. Again, before the record comes out, so the record company, Arista Records, Clive Davis, says, we don't want to own the photos, we just want to pay you for publicity rights. So now I own the photo shoot with Carlos Santana. Again, my Blue Period stuff with Carlos. And so I do all of this stuff up at his house for like 5 hours. He tells us the greatest story about tripping on acid at Woodstock during lunch and his guitar melting like a snake in his hand. It was unbelievable. Photography really can bring you to some really cool places, right? Like, look at where you are today shooting this, right? You get me. No, I'm sorry. Anyway, so these photos, and Carlos approved like 65 photos. But again, the label was thinking washed up rock star. Carlos leaves at 2:00 to pick up his son at the Golden Gate Bridge and carpool. And I'm like, are you coming back? I want to do 2 more setups. He's like, no, we're done. So I still did 6 or 7 setups. All these different, color film, black and white film, different formats, all this stuff. He approves a gazillion photos, and then it's the biggest record of the year, and I own all the photos, and the only rights they have are publicity, which means they can only use them in newspapers or magazines or editorial-based websites, right? anything else that wants to get used. So when he does the perfume fragrance, they got to come to me. Biggest license that I've ever done in my career. It's just, this is up in his house. So anyway, this shoot probably bought me my house. I don't know. More 4x5. You can see again going out of focus. Blue Polaroid film. They also made blue Polaroid film. That does not have a negative. That's the final art. And that was like another thing that I started doing when I was shooting for magazines. I started just shooting 4x5 Polaroids and then sending that to the magazine as final art, right? Instead of sending a transparency or a print or something like that. So we, again, learn the rules and then break them, right? If you want to be creative, that's sort of my motto, learn the rules and then break them. More 4x5 with the Polaroid film. A weird collage that I made of Carlos shooting a bunch of different things and then scotch taping them together. So much great stuff with Carlos, so many opportunities, recording studios. This is a gig that he did at his high school, played with a bunch of high school students, backstage with Derek Trucks and Susan Tedeschi and Warren Haynes at Jones Beach, on stage at Jazz Fest. I got hired to do stills on a video shoot in Golden Gate Park, and I ended up getting this shot, and then it became his next album cover. And then I was doing a shoot with him right at the end of the pandemic up in Marin. It was 3 shoots in one. It was a shoot for his cannabis brand, his headphone company, and then they needed a shot for his new record, and I got that also. All right, that's Carlos. Neil Young. Everybody loved Neil Young. Neil Young, in high school, we just adored Neil. We loved Neil. As you saw earlier, I took a photo when I was 16 years old. I've had a lot of opportunity to work with Neil. This is Neil Young and Elvis Costello at the Bridge School benefit with Pearl Jam and Eddie Vedder, with Paul McCartney, at the Bridge School, shooting from behind the stage, backstage. That's one of his cars. He had, he's a big car collector, and his tour bus. Shooting a rehearsal for Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. They were in this giant warehouse. They didn't want any lights on. It was really dark. When they came out, I had the lighting guy who's a friend of mine turn the lights on, and Neil comes out and goes, Keith, turn those landing lights off. And he turns them way down. I could barely shoot, so you could see him using the lights on there. And then they go to get their nails done, right? They have like a nail salon person because they want to coat them with like acrylic so they can pluck their guitars without breaking their fingernails. And David Crosby comes up to me and goes, if you take a picture of me getting my nails done, I will kill you, your wife, your children, and every single person that you've ever known in this entire world. So I have no pictures of them getting their nails done. But this is Neil up in Seattle, and so I had a relationship with Neil's manager, right? So basically, Neil's manager said, Jay, you could do whatever you want, wherever you want, as long as it doesn't cost me any money. And that was my deal. And I had full access to Neil Young in so many different ways. And so all in the 90s and early 2000s, I was the only one getting access to him. If you shot like this shot here, I'm in the pit right in front of the stage. All the other photographers are 100 feet back at the soundboard, right? So I'm doing portraits of Neil. And because they knew that the record company would come to me and give me money, and they knew that the magazines could just come to me and get the work. And so it was a great deal for me. I didn't care that Neil wasn't paying me because I knew that I could make money doing this. So art and commerce, you got to do them both, right? I finally got my Neil Young album cover a few years ago, Noise and Flowers. This is my first portrait session with Neil in 1991. And Neil, out of all the artists I've ever worked with, hates being photographed more than anybody else. And so this is Neil saying, okay, Jay, your 10 minutes is up. Literally, like, you're done. And so we shot him for 10 minutes against this wall. This is for the cover of Pulse magazine. And then we went outside, and he was still doing the interview with the writer. And I said, can you sit on the firewood, and can I do another quick little shoot? And he said, yeah. Me and my daughter make zines, and this is our zine, our Neil Young zine that came out 6 months ago or so. Rockoutbooks.com. I don't have any books to sell. I don't have any cards to give you. If you want to check out my work or buy books, sign things, just go to rockoutbooks.com. So this is one of my portraits of Neil from that same day, and there's the Pulse cover. Another shoot that I did. This was down in La Honda area, Woodside area, south of San Francisco. And it was like a press junket day, and I was doing a portrait for Musician magazine. And I drove down, and I'm on Skyline Boulevard. I'm doing 50 miles an hour, and all of a sudden the restaurant where he's doing this press junket comes up, and I pull in, and I hit the brakes, and I skid across the gravel parking lot, and this production assistant guy comes running over from MTV, and he's like, shh, be quiet. Kurt Loder, you guys remember Kurt Loder from MTV, is interviewing Neil. And so he finishes the interview with Kurt, and he sits down to do the portrait of me, and I do a test Polaroid, right? This is when we were shooting film, so I do a test Polaroid, takes 90 seconds to develop. The publicist, Bob Merlis from Warner Brothers, looks at me, goes, you have 10 minutes, hits his stopwatch, goes into the restaurant, and I pull the Polaroid. I'm waiting 90 seconds for it to develop, right? Wasting 90 seconds on my 10 minutes. And then Kurt Loder comes over and starts talking to Neil. 10 minutes later, the publicist comes out and goes, you're done. I go, I haven't taken one photo yet. I did a test Polaroid. He's been talking to Kurt Loder the whole time. Bob Merlis looks up Kurt, says, get the fuck out of here. Jay, you have 10 minutes. Go. Hits the stopwatch. I have 10 minutes. And I shoot as fast as I can, including on this weird high contrast black and white film, and end up with the shots. Again, so this is, Stu here's in the graphic arts photography world. So this is Polograph. Do you know what Polograph was? It's a black and white Polaroid film that was used for shooting black type on white paper before the internet existed and digital technology, when we did corporate slideshows, and it basically gave you white lettering on a black background. But I started shooting people with it, and it wasn't meant to be shot with people, and they were rolls of 12 exposures, and you only got about, you can see all the highlights are blown out, the shadows are really dark. It's almost impossible to get a good exposure, so you have to bracket in like very tiny increments to actually even get anything, because if you're a half a stop off, it's just completely unusable. So again, wrong film, wrong place. Why not, right? All right, this might be my last Neil Young story. I can't remember. So this is Link Volt. Do you guys know what Link Volt is? It's the Neil Young's electric car that he invented. So we're at the Bridge School benefit, and I'm up on the truck ramp above this car, and I go to Neil. I go, that's a really beautiful car, right? He goes, oh yeah, this is, look at the chrome, blah, blah, blah. I go, hey, can I get a photo of you next to it? He goes, yeah, no problem, right? And so to the right of that truck is a set of stairs that went down the loading ramp. This is actually a different car turned around. Actually, it is the same car at a different time. Sorry, mistake that photo's in here. Anyway, so Neil Young walks around. I'm waiting. I'm up on the truck ramp, and he never comes. So finally, I look around on the side of the bus, and he's like sitting in the sun. There's this one little patch of sun. He just goes and he just sits down there. And so I'm just sort of watching him from a distance, and I'm just sort of hanging out. And then I walk over, and there's a little bush right next to him, and I pluck that yellow flower, and I just hand it to him. Don't even say a word, and I walk away. And then a van pulls up, and Ben Harper gets out, and I had just given Ben a copy of my book, Hippie Chick, the day before. So Ben gets out of the van, Jay, your book, it's amazing, gives me a big hug, and that's the best thing you want. Rock stars hugging you in front of other rock stars, right? Completely validates your existence, right? So Ben and Neil sit down for a few minutes. I come over, take a couple photos. I'm just sort of hanging out in the wings. I go away, watching Neil hang out, and then finally, Neil stands up, and I beeline it over to him. I go, hey, do you still want to do that shot in front of Link Vault? He goes, oh, yeah, no problem. So he walks around the truck, comes around in front of Link Vault, stands there, still holding the flower that I'd given him like 20 minutes earlier, and I do a 90-second photo shoot. I probably shot 60 photos really fast, and then he walks away, and you get the magazine cover. And then this is one of my fave shots of Neil. They asked me to do a visa photo for him because he can't walk into Walgreens and do a visa photo. So I was backstage at a concert, and he let me shoot him for like 15 seconds. You're not allowed to wear a hat when you take your visa photo. He didn't shave. I shot for like maybe 15 photos, and he goes, okay, Jay, you're done. I go, wait, one more for me with the hat on. He puts the hat on, looks at me with that face. I take one picture, and he gets up and walks away. But I just love that shot of Neil. Just real quick, here's some other things that I've done. Red Hot Chili Peppers, Nirvana in a record store on Haight Street in 1990. The Flaming Lips, Wayne wrote the foreword for my last coffee table book. The Butthole Surfers, I don't have time to tell you why there's a naked woman on fire on the stage, but ask me about it later. The band X with a stage diver jumping off the stage. Mosh pit at the I-Beam on Haight Street. The Swans, people getting crushed. Look at this guy down here. This is Chris Cornell from Soundgarden, stage diving. This is all of Pearl Jam and all of Soundgarden in 1992. When Chris Cornell passed away, I posted this on social media, had 1 million views. Chris was such an iconic performer. Eddie Vedder in 1992. I shot Alanis Morissette's first magazine cover. Jane's Addiction, that was for BAM. Snoop Dogg. Snoop was smoking weed during the photo shoot. I turned around to load some film in my Hasselblad, and he passed out in the chair. I shook his shoulder. He's like, yo, man, I'm known for passing out at my photo shoots. Spinal Tap. John Lee Hooker, David Byrne, Blue Session, Radiohead in 93 when their first record came out. Dr. Dre for The Source magazine. Gary Payton and E40. Do you guys know who this is? This is Anton LaVey, the head of the Church of Satan. As photographers, we get to go to the most interesting places in the world, literally. I got to go to the Church of Satan and photograph Anton LaVey. Neil Young. Again, so this is like what Bill was talking about. I shot this for Pulse magazine, then Guitar Player magazine used it. Just like BAM, I'd shoot something and Bill would call me, hey, do you have any recent portraits of Neil Young? We're doing a cover, and I'd give him some stuff. Relics, Yorma. So do you guys remember I talked about adolescent stupidity earlier in the day? Well, that for me and for everybody's goal should be to have it turn into lifelong magic, right? That is the ultimate goal. So I think I have to be done. I have a great Tom Waits story, and only if Bill Crandall, the president of the board, said I can tell it, I will do it. But Bill, if you say no, there's not enough time, I will respect that. Bill, the ball is in your court. Sorry, Asima. All right, everybody know who Tom Waits is? Right, so Tom Waits is just the most epic human being ever. So this is my first portrait session of Tom Waits, and this is in a recording studio north of San Francisco in a town called Katati. And so this is the room where he recorded a record called Bone Machine. And this in itself is an epic story, but that's not the story I'm going to tell. But this is my first portrait session with Tom Waits, and you'll have to hear that story another time. But this is the story that I'm going to tell, which is this photo. So I go up to do another portrait session of Tom, and I set up a light at the same recording studio on this furniture here, and I say, hey, Tom, this is going to be the cover shot. And he goes, do it, let me see the Polaroid. And this is a black and white Polaroid. And he goes, do you guys know what Tom Waits sounds like? It's like he drank, I swallowed a box of razor blades and chased it down with a bottle of whiskey. And so he goes, well, Jay, I don't know, that furniture looks like it should be on my grandmother's front porch. What else do you got? Right? So I'm like set up with all my lights and everything to make this. It's got the sky for the logo of the newspaper. And the recording studio was Prairie Sun. Do you remember Prairie Sun, Bill? So Prairie Sun was a working photo studio, but also a chicken ranch. So there's chickens running around everywhere. So then we walk over to this old motorcycle, right? And I have 30 minutes, right? It's me, my assistant, and the publicist, and Tom. And they're like, you have 30 minutes. So I walk over to the motorcycle, and he's looking at it. I'm like, abandoned motorcycle. On the other side of the barn is a clawfoot bathtub. He doesn't want to go in that. We go over here. He's looking around. I'm like getting nervous because I'm like 10 minutes into my 30 minutes. He's looking at it. I'm trying to shoot. And then all of a sudden he kneels down next to it. This is shot with a panoramic camera, which is why it's long and wide. It's called a wide lux. I blow off a roll of 35 millimeter with a motor drive really fast. And he goes, yeah, this isn't really working for me. What else do you got? So I walk around to the back of this old building, and there's like a 1940s water furnace back there behind him. And I say, sit here. And he's like, I don't think so. I think I should be standing up. I go, let me do a test Polaroid, sitting down and standing up. And I do them in 4x5. So again, it takes 2 minutes to do each one, plus the 90 seconds for it to develop. And so he looks at it and he goes, I think you're right. It's better if I'm sitting down. Just watch out for my double chin. So I shoot a couple of sheets of 4x5 film, which again takes 2 minutes a sheet. And then I break out, do some 4x5, and then I break out this little half-frame camera. It takes a half a picture at a time. It was a 1960s Taurus camera. It gave you 72 shots per roll of film. 2 frames equals 1 35mm frame. And he's wearing his Canadian tuxedo, as you can see. Right? And he goes, I don't know, Jay. He goes, listen. There's this car. It's 2 minutes down the road. Let's go take some pictures next to this car. But first, let me change into my Italian suit. So he goes and puts on this epic black Italian suit that's the cuffs are too short on his legs. They're 6 inches up, and we jump in his old like Chevy Tahoe from the '90s, and we start driving away from Katati, and we drive 30 minutes to Petaluma, right? And all my equipment I left up at the recording studio, and I just had all these cameras around my neck. I look like Dennis Hopper in Apocalypse Now. Right? And my assistant and the publicist are following in her rental car. And I just have all my cameras, no lighting, nothing, right? So I'm just winging it. And I say, can I shoot some photos while we're driving? He's like, yeah. He's like, you can shoot some photos, And we're talking about people we know in common. And he goes, do you remember the woodpecker from the 60s? That's me. And he starts doing this, right? He starts doing this with his face. He's like, I'm the woodpecker, right? You guys remember the woodpecker, right? So like we're driving along and he's making faces and we finally get to this house 30 minutes down in Petaluma, driving on back roads. And he goes, look at this car that he's driving, right? He goes, I don't know whose house this is. I don't know whose car this is. And you're the captain of this ship, so you better go ask permission. Well, Petaluma, where we're doing this, is the crack capital of the Bay Area, okay, or the meth capital, right? So I go up to the house, and the window shades are all like sheets that are thumbtacked up, and I'm knocking on the door, and nobody answers. So the car is up this long driveway. It's cow country, and you have to jump over a cow barbed wire fence. And so we start walking up the driveway. We make it halfway up, and this little old lady comes out of the house. And it's a February winter day, beautiful, 70 degrees, warm. And she's got this big overcoat, chiffon scarf tied under her chin. And she comes up and she goes, can I help you? At the top of her lungs. And I'm like, yeah, we wanted to know if we could take some pictures of my friend Tom next to the car. And at the top of her lungs again, she goes, it doesn't drive. And so I realize she's deaf. Okay. And so I'm like, no. And I have all the cameras. I have 5 cameras around my neck. My assistant's got another bag of cameras. And so I break out a little piece of cardboard, which I still have because I save everything, including the tear sheet from when I was 17 and published in the Aquarium. And I write, I would like to take pictures. We want the old car to stay here 15 minutes, stand next to the car. I'll give you $20. And she goes, it's got no wheels. Hasn't driven since my husband died in 72. It's like a 1950s car with no wheels. So we jump over the fence, and this is the car that Tom saw driving by it on like this road. And so this is with the wide lux panoramic camera, and this is a Polaroid, and we're just shooting. And then Tom starts trying to sell me the car. Want to buy a car? It's a really good car. It's got no wheels. Right? So we shoot Tom. He's here selling me the car. There's the house in the background. And we shoot for 15 minutes. He's like, remember him in what was the vampire movie that he was in? Dracula. He was in Dracula, right? No, you guys don't. Anyway, look it up. Tom Waits, Dracula. Thank you. She confirms. Anyway, so this is the toy camera that I was using for these shots. We used to shoot with like a plastic $12 toy camera. It was called a whole gun. It gave you like weird. It was a plastic lens, and nothing was really in focus. And then he says, "Hey Jay, get a shot next to me in front of the grill because it looks like my face." So he kneels down. We're shooting fast and furious. I break out the blue film. We shoot some with the Hasselblad. And then he looks at me. He goes, I think we're done. I got to go. And he gets up. I'm like, no. One more roll of film. And he goes, okay, make it fast. And I break out the action sampler. Okay, this is like a $6 toy camera that's pink and green and blue and yellow and red and clear, and it has 4 lenses and takes 4 pictures at once with a little spinning shutter, and then you wind it, and it has like that little viewfinder on top to look through because it's really disarming. Like you're shooting Tom Waits and this is what it does. And only one frame is really in focus because it's a plastic camera and your film doesn't lay flat. And I'm just winding through the camera as fast as I can, shooting him on the plastic Lomo. And then he goes, I gotta go. And he jumps over the fence and he starts running down the driveway. And I'm shooting Polaroids and pulling them out of the 1970s, the typical tourist Polaroid that our parents had, throwing them on the ground. And he gets in the car and he just drives away. And the 3 of us, me, my assistant, the publicist, look at him. We're like, what the fuck just happened? And that's the magic of Tom Waits. That, for real, is the end of the presentation. That's what I got for you. Garrett,
You want to go another hour?
I got so many slideshows in here, you don't even know.
All right. Well, give it up for Jay, everyone, please. Just a small smidgen of the career right there. And we would like to turn it over to everyone here that might have a question or two or several. And I'm sure Jay would love to answer. If you have one for me, by all means. But still, it's all about Jay.
Or Bill.
Or Bill, too. Yes.
My name's Lauren. Hi, I really enjoyed your presentation. Thank you for all the stories. I'm interested in your process of photography and taking photos. Did you study photography or did you educate along the way? You know what I mean? Did you try and become more of a master of the craft? Or
I am self-taught.
Cool.
I mean, I studied photography in college, but they didn't teach me any of what you just saw. How I shoot, how I approach color, how I approach black and white, lenses, just all the creative stuff. It was more of I don't even know what my photography program was like after Middlesex. That was very technical. Here, go out and shoot this building and show us how you make it so it's not, vortexed. But no, I'm self-taught. Just figured it out because I have so much ADD, I didn't know what else to do with my life. Right? Oh, back there. We'll come to you afterwards.
So right now there's so much digital photography, and I'm assuming yours was film.
Everything you saw is film. Well, not everything. Like the Neil Young portrait was digital. There was a little bit of digital in there. So I stopped shooting film in 2008, and I've not shot film once since. So I'm 64 years old, not an easy transition. If you guys remember, people that were my age, even trying to figure out email when we first did that, right? My first email address was JBPhoto, JAY, letter B, FOTO, the dumbest ever. I had to explain it to everybody, because we thought we were so clever and it was the internet and things like that. So I have a lot of friends who are my age or a little bit older that were not able to make that transition from film to digital. And I got very lucky and I hired some young kids to come work for me that were smarter than me and more digitally savvy than me. And we, early on, we built a digital studio. So the first, I want to say 3 to 5 years, I was still shooting on film, but we were scanning that film and delivering our jobs digitally to clients. And it actually also turned into a revenue stream for us as well, because we used to take negatives and get them printed at the lab and deliver those to the clients. Now we were scanning our own negatives and billing our clients for that. And a lot of that happened during 9/11 and right after 9/11. And then, of course, the build up to the 2008 crash. And so, the photography industry drastically changed over those 8 or 9 years from when 9/11 happened and the world changed up until 2009, 10, and 11, 12, when digital cameras really caught up quality-wise. I can hear you. Right, the warmth of analog audio, vinyl records, tube amps. Absolutely, it's the same thing. And when I first started shooting digital, I hated it. Everybody had the same cameras, the same sensors. The software didn't really exist the way it does now to do things. I mean, my early efforts in digital, we did everything we could to make it look like film. We added noise and grain and did all these filters and did all this stuff to make it look different. And at first, I was very original in that and one of the first people doing that. Sort of in the Grateful Dead jam band photography world. And now you can just do it by sliding a couple of levers in Lightroom or whatever. It's sort of become idiotized. Anybody can do it. So again, it's, how you're looking through your camera. But yeah, we all have the same cameras, the same lenses, the same sensors. It's what you can bring to it from your eye and your heart and your soul to try and... Epic. Right. Yeah, you can equate film photography, same thing, warmth and grain and all of those things. Absolutely. And that's why a lot of the kids, and my daughter only shoots film now. And, that's a thing. It's sort of come back. But, for me, the workflow doesn't exist. The film stocks, the Polaroid, the blue film, all the things I did, none of that exists anymore. So I'm happy living in my digital world.
Jay, thanks for the great storytelling. Quick question about that initial spark that took you into New York City and got that fantastic photo. Was it your objective to get published back in those days, or were you thinking that far ahead, or you just wanted to get a great photo?
No, I was not at 16 in my junior year of high school when I did the Yorma photo. I think it was just literally thumbtack it to my bedroom wall. Did not think about it. But, like I said, I somehow I thought in my brain, I'm going to write this story and mail it to the letters to the editor at Relics, and there it was. It got published, and it was a big moment as a 16-year-old. We'll get you next, Cam.
So I love your stories, Jay.
Thanks, Mike.
And I've got a question.
I just met this guy tonight.
Because I want to hear another story, because we stand out there in the audience waiting and waiting for the dead to come back on stage. There's that long break in between sets, and I'm hoping to hear your
strippers, cocaine, right? That's what you're wondering, if that's what happens backstage?
Yeah, I just
so boring. No, not even close.
You don't have a favorite story then?
A backstage story?
Yeah.
At the Capitol Theater in Passaic, New Jersey in 1980, somehow Dan Healy gave me a backstage pass, and I went backstage, and I had a cassette deck because somebody gave me one to tape the show, and I gave it to somebody else to tape the concert. And Bob Weir came over and was looking at this tape deck and I was 17 years old, maybe 18 years old. And Steve Parrish, the main head roadie for the Grateful Dead, was just like, I don't know who the fuck you are, dude, and literally grabbed me by the collar, picked me up, and kicked me out of the venue backstage. I think the show was over. So it wasn't set break, but, it was a backstage story. But, backstage is these days is pretty tame. I mean, you might find like a younger band now that wants to do a lot of drugs and, do that kind of thing and whatnot. But any band anybody that's our age, it's all pretty tame. Yeah. I mean, I'm still doing a lot of cocaine myself, but, I did cocaine for the last time in 1980. So I'm 45 years out. Mark Norwine.
First of all, being tossed out of a show by Parrish is a badge of honor, I think.
Absolutely.
Okay. Talking about the transition from film to digital got me thinking. As you know, I shot a lot of concerts.
Yep.
And you put in a couple of 36 rolls, and you know that you came home and you've got nothing but Pulitzer winners. And then you get them back from the developer, and it's like, well, there's 2 that are good, there's 2 that you might show someone, and the rest are trash. And it takes you a really long time to learn how to not shoot trash.
Right.
And concerts were lit really badly back then, too.
Yeah, you were trying to get all that knowledge through osmosis. You shoot, you fail, you come back, you try it again.
How long did it take you to get to the point where you were getting the majority of a roll as good photos?
3 weeks.
Oh, stop.
I don't really remember. I mean, if you look at a lot of my early stuff from the 70s, it's, there's shots that are out of focus and overexposed and cropped poorly. So I would say, I think that just in general, I had an eye for, everybody says, oh, that person has a good eye for photography. Like if you handed your Instamatic in college to your friend and you're standing there and they took a picture and it was like from your neck up and then just the ceiling and the wall. Like I actually knew how to compose a photograph kind of from the beginning, and maybe that's just innate, but I knew how to do that. So, but, actually figuring out how to properly expose film, it takes a long time. It's trial and error. Unlike today where you can take a digital photo and look at the back of your camera and be like, too light, too dark, too this, too that. And if you're fast and nimble, you can fix it immediately. So it takes a while.
Okay.
Amy from St. Louis has a question.
What advice are you giving Ricky, your daughter?
What advice am I giving Ricky? Only do good drugs. So my daughter works with me. So besides my photography, so my daughter manages my archive along with me, and she curates all these museum exhibits and helps art direct all these books. Did you guys see the Grateful Dead GD60 special issue that Relics put on? My daughter created that. She was the creative director of that. And she's doing one right now for Relics that they just announced the other day with Bob Weir. She's also doing that one. And so we also have a business together called Retro Photo Archive, and we own and or manage about 30 other archival photography collections, including Mark Norwine, who just spoke. We manage his archive as well. And like he said, there's a handful of shots, and we've used some in some gallery exhibits and whatnot. And so and Retro Photo Archive is only photographs that were shot on film. So it's essentially the early 1960s until, the early 2000s, right? And so we have some incredible photographs, and it's a licensing business. We license to books, magazines. Like today, we licensed a photo to a educational magazine in Montana that's doing a story on the American Indian movement taking over Alcatraz in 1969 and 1970. Do you guys remember when that happened? It was a national news story. And we own a photographer named Beth Sunflower who shot 150 rolls of film of the American Indians taking over Alcatraz back then. And so we have tens of thousands of digital files. And so to Amy's question, I'm trying to teach Ricky how to be a good business person and how to negotiate and how to be fair and how to work with moving photography around digitally to clients and being responsive and just being a good citizen and doing good drugs.
I don't.
Cam.
Wait, I'm gonna get to it.
This is Cameron.
Hello. Can you talk more about when you went to Dead shows and you were just bringing your camera along, and then you transitioned to becoming an insider with the band, you said? Can you talk more about that?
So if you've been to concerts, you probably have noticed that most artists let people shoot them for the first 3 songs, and then they have to leave. And as corporate America takes over the music industry more and more, people are pushed more back. Like if you go to any big concert nowadays at, let's say, the Garden or whatever the thing is in Newark, the Prudentials, most photographers that are there for the press are shooting from the soundboard, right? There's no access like anymore. And so I typically only shoot things that I have all access. Like if I'm not in the dressing room when the bands are putting their underwear on, I don't want to be there, essentially. And so the one thing that was interesting about the Grateful Dead is from the very beginning of their career until Jerry Garcia died, they let any fan bring a camera into a concert. There was never any restrictions. I mean, you weren't allowed to be in the photo pit unless you had a pass, but you could bring your camera and wait online and be on up front on the rail or whatever, and you could photograph that. And so most of the stuff that I shot up until the late 80s when I started getting assignments for Rolling Stone magazine were just me bringing my camera to shows. And I went to as many shows and didn't bring my camera and hung out and danced with those people and had fun and had that experience as I shot shows. So if they were doing a 2 or 3 night run, I might shoot one night and not shoot 2, or might shoot 2 and not shoot 1. And then as my career started firing up in the late 80s, I was shooting a little bit more because I was trying to make a career. I was trying to figure out, how to get out of living in a house with 6 roommates and paying $100 a month rent. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Yeah, we have time for 2 more.
You got right there.
Thank you for being here. How'd you figure out how to charge and what to charge and how to make money? And when you first started and to get to that point where you're like, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this my career and earn.
Super complicated question, and I don't really know the answer because unfortunately, even the best photography schools in the country didn't teach you about the business of photography. And so I sort of learned by going along. I started repping a very famous photographer when he died about 15 years ago. And I learned how to say no. So people would be like, hey, we want to use these 7 photos. We can give you $100 each. And I'd be like, no. And they'd be like, you don't want $700? I'm like, it's $3,500. And they'd be like, no. And I'd be like, okay. And then they come back and be like, okay, we'll do it for $3,500. Right. And so there is no training program. There is no manual. There is no set rates. I mean, I shot a million things for nothing. I shot a million things. I mean, when I was first starting my career, I did every single stupid $50, $100, $200 job because I didn't want to have to go get a real job. I mean, I literally wanted to succeed as a photographer mostly out of fear. And the fear was fear of having to get a real job because that would be really fucked up, right? I mean, so... Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Anyway, so I just figured it out and we made it up as we get along. And I know that I gave away. I left a lot of money on the table, but I also saw how it happened. And as I matured as a photographer and matured as a businessman, I knew how to ask what I was worth. And I got it. Yeah.
Yeah, hi. Thanks so much for being here, Jay. My question is there a current celebrity or rock star, musician that you have not photographed that you would like to, and why?
I mean, there's not really a current one because I don't really care anymore about like what's on top 40 radio. It's just not what I listen to. I actually made a declaration in my office like a year ago. I'm like, I'm not listening to new music anymore. I don't care. I'm only going to listen to what Spotify feeds me on, like my Americana feed, or listen to Bob Dylan, the Beatles, and the Grateful Dead. And so, like I don't care that I'm not shooting Chapel Roan. Is that how she says her name? Like, I don't care. Like, I have no interest. I have no interest in being in a photo pit with 70 other photographers. I definitely have no interest in shooting from the soundboard. I would love to be face-to-face with Mick Jagger or Keith Richards and do a portrait. And I've done that with Keith, but not with Mick. Bob Dylan, more iconic people like that. But, I'm pretty happy with the archive I've created. I'm proud of it. I'm proud of my success. I'm proud that I actually have made a living. And most people that shoot music have 5-year careers, 10-year careers. You're lucky if you do 15 years of music and get out alive. And I've essentially been doing it for 45 years, and I've had an entire career as essentially a music photographer. And I don't know how I did it. And now I'm in museums and blah, blah, blah. And I'm not trying to like blow smoke and I'm not an egotistical person. I'm proud that I actually pulled it off, and I've lived a fabulous life in the process of doing it. And part of that is luck, and part of that is being in the right place. And part of it, people are like, how do you succeed? I'm like, you show up with your camera, right? Just show up. Just say yes and just show up. And that's what I've been trying to do for my life, and it seemed to have worked out, and I got really lucky. So thank you all. Thanks all the people that I've known for decades. Paula, thanks for driving up from down the shore, Bradley Beach. And if you have any more questions, I think I'm going straight to the back. Bill's not letting me stay here. Come and hang out and let's do a selfie and what else? Oh, yeah. Anybody wants to give $1 million? I'm serious. I'll give you a portfolio of Jerry Garcia prints.
Awesome. Everybody, thank you so much for showing up tonight. How many people, show of hands, would like to be reincarnated as Jay Blakesberg? Awesome. We see so many wonderful faces and people who have helped us out along the way, and it's wonderful to see. What's up, Barbara? And so please stick around. The night is not over. We are going to be listening to the music of the artist that Jay has shot. We're going to be eating. We're going to be drinking. Join us back there. And again, once and for all, what we need your connections, we need your support, and we need your involvement. And together, all of us, let's make the reimagined Rialto a reality. Thank you so much.